It was something that we've been considering for quite a while now, and having the presentation from your company showed us that we were actually ready to launch and to go for that. The reasons we were wanting to go digital was just to save us time, really. That was the main point, to be fully compliant and to have everything in that live, up-to-date data. So anything the carers are experiencing out in the field, we're also aware of in the office. Any information we get here, we can send to the carers immediately. So there's no delay, there's no having to rush out in the cars straight to go and do new assessments, to do MAR charts and to update things like that. It can be done from the office, but it's then sent over live to everybody else. I thought the training was fantastic. We had 2 full days here in the office where everyone could come in. It was split between the first day where we really just got to know the system and what it was going to be able to do for us. And then the second day was more actually how to use the system from our point of view in the office, and then also from a care worker's point of view. Then we started the implementation from there, which was obviously more from branch level, adding the care plans on the system itself, and then also working with our project launch manager to create the documents that we needed. So from our last training day, we then set our deadlines for our supervisors and everyone within the branches to put the care plans on. So from last day of training to go live day was 5 weeks. So that was for 750 customers and for 350 care workers to be used. Yeah, it was a very smooth implementation period, I think, because we planned it in advance. We looked at what was needed and when it was needed by, and set really clear deadlines for our staff so that they knew how many care plans they had to get on by which date, other documents that then needed to be added afterwards, and how they were going to be put on. So it was quite a clear system, but it needed a lot of follow-up and a lot of support from management to make sure that those deadlines were being met. So we had 2 sessions of day 1 and 2 sessions of day 2, but we had between 10 and 12 people on each training session. So for the first training session, we sent in all of our supervisors and our team leaders, the people and the managers, registered managers, so obviously they were aware, but the people who were going to be using the product and the whole system from front end all the way to everything we do in the office. On the second day, we sent in everyone again who was on the first, but we also sent in our ECM administrators so that they were aware how the system was going to work, and they could then learn how to teach the care workers how it was going to be used frontline out there in the field. Yes, we had a great relationship with our launch project manager, always at the end of the phone, always emailing, always coming back to us whenever we came up with any queries, helped us out the whole way along. So when it came to doing the plans for the implementation and preparing our teams for it, we just gave them clear deadlines really of what they needed to do, but each individual person had a different part to play in that process. So we didn't need to consider covering shifts or things like that for the people in the office, because when one person was doing a task, the other person was there and able to carry on with the day-to-day tasks. With the care workers, with them coming in, obviously they had to come in individually, one-to-one, to have their training. So they were then covered for their individual shifts at that time, but we were talking one care call. They were only in for an hour at a time, so it was easy to cover. When it came to organising end-to-end, there was a lot to consider, and I think also a lot that came up throughout that process that we then had to learn and adapt what we had originally set out to do. Very easy, very minor tweaks, but the forms that we had put on and the documentation that we then added meant that extra steps were needed. I would definitely recommend the way that we did it, because it was seamless. There was a very clear date that we had to get to at the end. everybody achieved for that point. We had a very clear spreadsheet that everybody followed, and it was updated daily. So it meant that we were fully aware of what was being achieved and by what time. So I highly recommend it, yes. Of course, that's fine. We did a lot to make sure that our process works smoothly, so we're proud of what we've achieved. So I'd be more than happy for that to be shared with other people. I think the biggest difficulty in implementation is time. We set our deadlines so that we had something to work towards, but there still wasn't enough time to consider everything that is required within it. So time was the only thing, but I have to say it was still easy. Even with that being the biggest difficulty, it's hard to find a difficulty because actually the process is so simple to follow. The system is so easy to use, but I would have to say the only negative was time.
Probably copying and pasting, all the tasks over. It's just a question of, create the visits, which was fairly straightforward, quite easy options to choose from, and selecting times and lengths or call durations. Then just creating the tasks from the information I already had because it was just copying and pasting really. It's very easy to access support. You've got the online chat window. They usually respond within 5 minutes, and they can come back with most answers fairly quickly. Then also you've got the out of hours, the telephone number to use, and again got through that fairly quickly as well. We speak to one member of support, and then they escalate it up to somebody else if necessary.
Throughout the process, we had, as I said, a spreadsheet that we followed. This was updated daily and then circulated to all of the managers that were involved. So everyone at all times had an awareness of where we were at and what was needed. We did have hiccups, as you can imagine. Maybe care plans weren't put on for the deadline, but then they were hit by the next one. We then changed our tact for those weeks as we needed to. And by the time it got to the end of the process, it was daily. So everybody was accountable for an area. Everybody knew where they were at in that process and what needed to be done to achieve. I would definitely recommend having a dedicated project manager. It meant that we had consistency from start all the way through and then ongoing. They were able to understand us and how our business worked, so the queries were answered immediately. They understood after meeting all of our teams what they needed as individuals just as much as actually what the company was trying to achieve, and made it seamless throughout. In total, we had 4 training sessions. We had 2 of the first session and 2 of the second session, so we could have as many people on and trained as possible.
It was very easy. Again, it was just copying and pasting information across again. Certainly our risk assessments are exactly the same on PASS as what they were with our previous care plans. So it's just simple, copy and paste and select the boxes as you go through.
I think when we choose to roll out to our next, we've got 2 offices that will be coming on in the coming months. We would definitely want the same project manager. As I've said before, they understand our company, they understand how we work, and they also know now how we've managed this project. So when we roll out in the other offices, that project will be managed in exactly the same way. So it would be invaluable to have his support again. We had update calls and progress support throughout. we decided when they were between ourselves and the project launch manager. He always kept in with emails and up to date. It was also nice that he called us just to give praise as well, to say, you know, I've noticed that you've achieved this many care plans, or that you've put on these documents. So it was nice to know that he was keeping in touch and looking at what we were managing to achieve without having to have us call in and say, oh, look what we've done. You know, he was there even when he wasn't communicating with us. We know he was still supporting us in the background. Things that we've implemented before would just be rostering systems. We haven't ever used anything for care management before. Changing rostering systems is a big task. So having done that previously actually did set us up quite well with then implementing this. We knew, again, the bits that you don't forget. We made sure we had a very clear system and we followed it throughout, so there wasn't any issues. I think if we had to change anything, my only suggestion would be that all of our documentation, our risk assessments and the forms that we then created onto Pass were actually on there before the second training session, because then we could have had that training session on our actual documents, as opposed to the ones that are on there, which we then have either removed or we've tweaked so much they now look like our own forms anyway. So I think if they were there from day one, that would have been a really good start for the team to get everything on. Instead, they put on all of the tasks, outcomes, the details page, the summaries, and now they're going on and adding on the additional forms. That could have been done at the beginning and potentially could have saved some time. And it would have just made it easier, I think, for our trainer to actually show us our documents at the time. I think as a whole, as the company, as the system and how it works, at the moment, we haven't found anything that we think does need improving. There are small things that need improving. I think the biggest thing to us is how we can't add on medications to be prescribed every 3 days, for example. They have to be weekly or on certain days, fixed days of the week, as opposed to a rolling free day. I'm aware that's coming though, which is fantastic. So as soon as that is out, that would be brilliant. They're the bits that have really held it back. The actual system itself has been fantastic.